So the first stage, the introductory phase, this is when the product is new. Nobody's heard of it before. We talked about in the product diffusion process, this would be the early adopters and the innovators. These are the guys that have to have the latest and the greatest. What we're doing at this phase when we're trying to sell products is we call primary demand. So rather than trying to create demand for my product versus somebody else's because the product is new, just tell you what the product is. One of my favorite, I should probably have this, one of my favorite examples of primary demand advertising was way back when flat screen TVs were new. And with flat screen TV, you could get a 32-inch TV for as little as $50,000 if you wanted a 32-inch flat screen TV. And there's only one company that made them. And so we had this beautiful advertisement where in the paper, because newspapers were still alive back then, they had a fold-out poster which was just a full-size picture of the TV. And the idea is that you could visualize what it would look like to have one of these TVs on your wall, so that the idea of the advertising was not to say why ours is better, why it has better picture, why it has better resolution. It's just, wow, big screen TVs. Yeah.
Kind of like Apple the first commercials were more like showing what the product actually was as opposed to like.
Thank you. That's an even better example. I'm going to change that. So talking about Apple, who are geniuses at this, when they came out with the iPod the first time. Those wonderful advertisements with the white earbuds and showing you not that this is better than any other MP3 player on the market, but this is an MP3 player. And the same thing with the smartphone. Smarter than you. Yeah, they're very good at that. I will change that. Thank you.
What's the niche with that?
The niche?
I mean, like.
So when you have a new product, brand new industry, brand new product category, people don't know what it is. So in the introductory phase, you got to recognize.
Say, like, we're better than.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter to say we're better than, because yeah, they don't know what anybody else is. So the point is, you're trying to generate primary demand, which is just demand for the product category rather than for specific brands in the category. And the sales are going to start slowly. And there's advantages and disadvantages to being first to market. We talked about positioning yet? You talked about positioning. So in positioning, we talked about being first to market gives you an advantage in positioning because you're creating the category in the consumer's mind. Similarly, with the product life cycle is the first company to enter the market gets some advantages because of positioning. It's called the pioneering effect because you get to create the category. You're the first person in there. The disadvantage is it's risky. There's a saying that pioneers get the arrows. And what we see a lot of times is the smaller, especially in the startup community, smaller companies that don't have a lot at stake can. That didn't make any sense. Smaller companies that don't have a large revenue stream to protect but can afford to take some risks are likely to be first mover, get into the market, create it. And then the alternative strategy is called second mover or me too or follow on. And the second mover waits until the product category has shown that it's successful, and then you enter the market. So we talked about Apple was first with an iPod, or let's just say with a smartphone. And when the smartphone became a huge success, then all of a sudden other companies start coming in with, that's the second mover. And what happens is the first mover is risky because we talked about how many new products fail and how hard it is to get into products successful, but it can give you a substantial competitive advantage. Second mover, we tend to see that with more established, larger companies that can afford to wait until a product has proven itself to be workable and then either buy the company or come up with a competing product. And that all happens kind of during the introductory phase, is just fighting out for who's going to be the early winner. Two strategies in pricing, actually in the introductory phase. There's actually three, but I'm going to talk about the third later. Skimming versus penetration. And the issue with pricing in the introductory phase is, remember that every new product starts at a loss. So what do we do? The issue is, how fast do you get your development costs back? A skimming strategy is where you try to get your development costs back as fast as possible. And with a skimming strategy, you set the initial price for your product as high as the market will bear. And then as you start developing production quantities, you ride the experience curve, you start to get your costs down a little bit, maybe competition starts coming in, you gradually decrease your prices, always keeping at the market level. This is the approach that's been used for years with consumer electronics. Right? The new hot product comes out, it's really expensive. So like I talked about flat screen TVs, where only a few years ago you could get one for as little as $50,000. Today, how much does it cost for a flat screen TV, 32 inches, if anybody would want one that small? Yeah, if you pay more than a couple $100, you got to think about that. But again, it rides down the experience curve, and then the next new technology comes in. What's the hot technology right now? There isn't one, actually. That's a problem in the industry. 3D didn't make it, and 4D HK, is that? I know that's the next one on the horizon, but is anybody buying 4D HK? The new technology is getting rid of your TV entirely, yeah. We old people, stop talking about TVs. Let's talk about that.
Well, what can I not do on my computer?
Yeah, what can you not do on your computer?
TVs are moving to be more like computers.
Right, TVs are moving to be more like computers. And your generation has no attachment to TVs. I grew up loving them. It's a love affair that's going to last for the rest of my life, so I will continue to talk about them. 90 inches, man. So anyways, that's the skimming strategy. The other approach is penetration. And penetration pricing is used for, especially for like a mass market consumer product, when you know it's going to be highly competitive. And the idea with a penetration pricing is you set your prices very low initially in order to gain market share as quickly as possible, and to make it less attractive for competitors. Because what happens when you're making high profits? You attract competition. So penetration pricing, we see this with consumer packaged goods type products. Come up with a new kind of detergent or a new cleaning product that will be priced very low initially, as opposed to pricing it very high and then waiting for the demand to pick up to bring the pricing down.